Hello, this is Susie Walker. I am the editor-in-chief at Psychologies magazine, and I am delighted and privileged to be joined by the wonderful Sophie Sabbage today. Hello, Sophie.
Hi, it's also my privilege to be here, and I'm grateful.
So, Sophie, I interviewed you a couple of years back, maybe 3 years back, when you were you just finished your book, The Cancer Whisperer. Just so if people don't know about you, Sophie is a best-selling author of The Cancer Whisperer and also Life Shocks. Sophie was diagnosed with terminal cancer. I think it was 2014.
I'm heading for my 6-year cancerversary.
Yeah, and for most people, when they get a terminal cancer diagnosis, they would maybe retreat into their shell and close down. Sophie did the opposite. She began writing books. She began writing and expressing herself. Her TED Talk is one of the most astonishing ones that I've ever. It's the one I recommend to every single person, whether they're grieving or not, about what life is really about. Sophie's books are extraordinary, and you really have to brace yourself if you want. It's not good going into Sophie's work if you just want to have a superficial connection with maybe what this work is all about. Sophie goes there in really magnificent style, and that's why I'm talking about your new project, which is your new audiobook, Awakening in the Time of Coronavirus, Lifting Emotional Lockdown. I haven't listened to all of it, but I'm just getting through it now. But tell us a little bit about this first of all. You tell us what the project is about.
Well, when COVID-19 hit and we went into lockdown, all my work was cancelled because it's talks and workshops. But I felt very poised to respond to the situation because I've lived with, uncertainty is easy for me these days. And I just saw all my work is about how every unexpected event is an opportunity for awakening. That's my life's work. Every unexpected, unwanted, blindsiding moment is a wake-up call, because these moments collide with our expectations of how things should be. But this is how things really are. So I instantly went, oh, this is a great awakening. And initially I launched a masterclass for a few months to help people through their loneliness and their fear and their grief in this situation, but also to help people engage with what is this situation telling us about who we are and how we live? Are we going to treat this as something to get through and then go back to normal? Or are we going to recognize this that is as an experience, a global experience that is challenging norms that no longer serve us? So that's how it started. And then my publisher called me and said, can you create an audiobook about this in as fast as you can? So I did. And it's
and what you've done is I, as editor in Psychologies, I'm so passionate about the inner work, and I tell everybody about it. I say, oh, have some therapy, have some this. Oh, this is amazing. It will change your life. It'll transform your life. It will wake you up. It will give you.
People go, oh yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Totally roll their eyes and go, yeah, whatever, Susie. There's nothing wrong with me. And I'm like, it's not about that there's anything wrong with you. It's about waking yourself up to what is really important in life. And what I love what you're doing with the audiobook is actually you've got sessions with real people and you're taking them through the process of transformation. And just before this call, I said to Sophie, oh, why don't we do some live sessions for Psychologies where we do that, so Sophie can take people through the process, which would be amazing if you do that. But this audiobook is actually you working very specifically with 3 people. Talk about that.
It's a workshop. More than a book, it's a workshop. And that was what's so glorious about creating an audiobook, is because you can do live work with people. And it was exciting for my publisher too, actually. So I took real people, a man whose business was locked down, or was just closed, and was very frightening for him when that happened. A woman, a care worker on the front line who had significant PPE, life shocks. She was taking care of vulnerable people with very inadequate PPE. And a woman in Ireland, 70-year-old woman in Ireland, who was locked down on her own for 4 months. So I did 4 live sessions, process sessions with those 3 people in the book, where I take them from fear to creativity, from loneliness to connection, and from grief to love, essentially. And so it was such a joy for me. I mean, they're the stars of this book because they go deep and they go real and they go vulnerable. You know, I often say, let's go in deep, come up light. We go in deep, we come up light. And they go in deep in this book, and they wear their insides on the outside. And I get to show people what my work really is. I mean, reading about it is one thing, but experiencing it, witnessing, hearing it makes it real. So, yeah, it's more of a workshop than a book. I mean, there is narrative in it, obviously. But I think that's the heart of the book and what makes it special.
I mean, it's so brave of those people to actually do that, in terms of being vulnerable. But I think for many people, and you know, in my own processes, you know, the reason why I don't want to go there is because I don't want to make myself vulnerable. So how do we, in the beginning, when we're trying to unpick all of this inner work about maybe why, you know, we're going to be waking up, but we don't want to go there to the vulnerability. How can we start sort of softening and being more honest and real about what's going on for us inside, versus just constantly going on, you know, this kind of superficial, everything's fine, I'm okay. You know, start
there comes a point, as Anais Nin said, when it's more painful for the bud to stay closed than to open. So that accumulates more and more pain. And part of what I think we're being awakened to is how emotionally locked down we are as a culture. So what would the big cosmic cheese give us to awaken us to our psychological lockdown pain? It would literally lock us down. And shine a light on and accentuate the pain we've been ignoring for a long time. So one of the things that happened during this crisis is these emotions started to surface. People's fears started to rise, people's grief, not just about the immense losses that were actually happening, but old grief started to surface. So one of the things this situation did was bring to the surface a lot of our lockdown pain, which I think is part of the divine point, is to bring to the surface a lot of our lockdown fear. I mean, we've been wearing masks for years, Susie. Hello. I mean, we're kind of, there's this great debate about, is it taking away our individual liberties, and should we wear them and shouldn't we wear them, and people calling other people COVID-idiots depending on which side they stand, and yet more separation, yet more division, yet more I'm right, you're wrong, yet more of the same, when this was inviting us to connect with one another profoundly and globally. But how about looking at the masks we've already been wearing? That have like the I'm not good enough masks, the I have to pretend I'm fine masks, the look good masks, the hide my fear and vulnerability masks. These are the masks that really matter and have been robbing us of our inner emotional and spiritual freedom for a really long time. So I look at it and go, which of those do you really want to have a conversation about? Because the coronavirus has unmasked us, actually, more than put masks on us. It's unmasking our masks. You can't make it up. Sometimes the universe is very, very, I mean, very, very clear, writes it on a blackboard. You are already locked down. You are already masked. You are already separated. You are already isolated and lonely. What do I need to give you to get you to pay attention? A literal manifestation of your internal states. I mean, it's kind of beautiful and perfect. I know it's hard and painful, but there are breaks and breakthroughs. So there's been an epidemic of loneliness, Susie, for a long time. Research shows it's now the #1 killer in Western culture. But it's stigmatized and silenced because of shame. People will say they're depressed before they admit their loneliness. Well, now a light has been shone on the epidemic of loneliness, the pre-existing epidemic of loneliness, which is killing far more people than COVID has or probably ever will. You know, really, cancer is a much bigger health crisis than COVID-19. But I think it's the most serious health crisis in a century because of the impact it's had on our norms and on our expectations and on our entitlements, which are being toppled like dominoes. That was...
Yeah. So, but I think absolutely, and I love that. I'd never even thought of it like that, that metaphor of wearing a mask, and that it's a symbol of, you know, how we wear these social masks constantly. But what I suppose that I'm interested in is how do we take off all of these masks that we've been wearing and start to live a life that's aligned to our true values, which is psychology. So we've always been about, you know, living a values-based life. That's what our magazine, that's the song we sing. But how, you know, and you know, hopefully,
yes, but how is the question, right?
Yes, it's how do we do it? So for people listening to this, what wisdom has us? Where do we start? How do we begin?
Let me give you just a few starting points, and then this goes into much more depth in the book. But begin with, one of the things I recommend is every single day we have what I call life shocks. So any unexpected moment that hits you during the day is a life shock. And we need to learn to notice them and pay attention to them. There are moments in time when you're chucking along and feeling, you know, connected and okay, and then suddenly your emotions shift. You suddenly feel irritable or frustrated or angry or sad. Something happened between those two emotional states. Track it and write them down. Make a practice of writing these moments down, because when we can learn to engage with these moments, we can set ourselves free fast, actually. And the other thing is a really simple thing is breathing.
Yeah.
So when you notice your emotional state change, or your body tense up, or you have one of these moments in time, the first thing to do is take 3 conscious breaths. So that's in through your nose, down into your belly, and out through your mouth like you're blowing out a candle. 3 breaths can shift your emotional state, or at least give you a perspective and a sense of, okay, I need to take a step back and then ask the question, what am I feeling right now? And feelings are in your body. They manifest physically. Where is the tension? Where is the pain? Is it in your throat? Is it in your heart? Is it in your gut? Have you gone numb? Numbness is a feeling, by the way. It's a feeling. I feel numb. That's a starting point. And some of us get emotionally flooded, and it's easy to go, I'm feeling a lot. And some of us get rationally flooded, so it's harder for them. When they have a life shock, they go all into their heads. Yeah. Breathe. Notice what's going on below your neck. And put your breath into that place, because when I breathe into attention in my body, and I just say, okay, what does this have to say? It always has words. What is this feeling trying to say? So I think noticing your life shocks, using your breath, practicing breathing into your feelings instead of numbing them out. You're going to be okay. Breathe into them rather than ride over them, because the more you ride over them, the more painful it actually becomes internally. And I go into much more depth with all of this, obviously, but we were literally put inside, I suggest, because it's time to go inside, really inside.
Yeah,
so that's just a few starting points.
I think, I mean, I love the idea of it starting small and noticing your everyday, because normally we won't look at this until something big happens. So my parents, I think we talked, you know, they died when I was a teenager. And so for me, I had that life shock quite early on. And almost you did this beautiful talk about this in your TED talk about that, you know, we find all of these ways to avoid grief. And I think I spent probably a decade avoiding feeling anything by, you know, because, but the reason was to be compassionate to myself, is because I was afraid if I started to feel that feeling, it would destroy me. I wouldn't survive it. So I think this idea of doing it slowly and in small ways, starting to feel your feelings, giving them a voice, talk to them before it gets really big, and to when something terrible does happen, which, you know, it does, life, that's what happens. And then you're more agile, you're more skilled about dealing with your emotions. So I think what you're teaching are skills to become more agile with it. So when, you know, with your, you know, a terminal cancer diagnosis, I mean, as horrific as it is, but you're perhaps more skilled at, maybe this is allowing you to do the work that you're doing now.
That's so well said. I mean, I think firstly, if you miss the small life shocks, they're going to get bigger, because not engaging with the small life shocks is the same as not engaging with reality. So they're very count-onable. That's the wonderful thing about life shocks. They'll just keep coming and coming and coming and getting bigger and bigger until you wake up and pay attention. So that's the first thing. And I think, you know, it's so, part of what you're naming is, I feared it would destroy me. So this is another big piece, is we're scaring ourselves more than anything else is scaring us. We have a tough situation, and then the mind comes in. I call it mind talk, some people call it self-talk, and says, if you feel your feelings, it's going to destroy you, and none of which is true. We just frighten ourselves. A big part of this is learning to release the beliefs and the fears that shut you down. And it's a huge part of the work I do. I mean, the woman in the book who was incredibly lonely, she was in isolation, but at the bottom of it was, I'm on my own because I'm unlovable. When she got over that, she sat on her own. She was at home on her own with a little fly on her computer and feeling connected to the entire universe, including the fly, deeply, deeply connected while still alone. Because we carry these beliefs into crowds. People feel lonely in crowds, you know. It's not about, are you with someone? So that's a huge part of what we need to learn to release. And I think the grief piece, I mean, I renamed the grief cycle in that TED talk, the resist grief with all my might cycle.
Yeah.
Because grief doesn't actually feature in the grief cycle, as in the courageous expression of sorrow. So all of this is part of it. But I think what's so powerful now is you don't need to do years of therapy to learn these things now. And there are some very powerful methods and teachers and facilitators who can help you engage with it. But just know, if you're afraid of going there, at some point life will take you there anyway. So you may as well take a deep breath and choose to go there before life forces you to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. And it is true. And I feel like, in a way, one of the things that you said in your TED talk was, you know, that you were also grieving for all the lost opportunities, all the careers that you never had, all of those things. Yeah. And like you, I always feel like this feeling of I wasted a decade, maybe maybe 15 years of my life resisting that grief and all the behaviors and the drinking and the nonsense that I did to try and numb myself not to feel that grief, when I could have been getting on. I could have been doing some, living and feeling joy and passion and love and all of those things. But I was so resisting. I was in this awful cycle of trying to just stay on the other side of, as you say, that courageous expression of sorrow is a beautiful expression.
Yeah. Well, I slightly challenge that. I do challenge that you wasted those years. That's just more of this, FYI. That's, you didn't. You got to where you got to when you got to it.
Okay.
So let's not do that to ourselves as well.
Yeah. Right? Good. Yeah. Thank you for.
Yeah. Let's not do that. And but being fully alive does not mean being happy, Susie, or being positive. I'm allergic to positivity, personally. Authenticity is where it's at for me. So there's a lot of putting icing on dog poo and calling it a cake, positivity, and feeling I'm good, I'm fine, everything's good. Let's not do that to ourselves either. So being fully alive means feeling all your joy and all your pain.
Yeah.
If you want to be fully alive, feel all your joy and all your wonder and all your love and all your grief and all your fear and all your rage. But release those, please. Feel. Being alive is about feeling all of it. And if you're not feeling all of it, then you're only half alive.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that kind of expression of I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when I'm happy, when actually it, as you say, it's been, I was just having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and she said, I'm constantly looking, what's wrong with me if I'm not happy? And I'm like, just go to bed, put the duvet over your head and just look after yourself.
Be happy for a day. I mean,
and it passes. And then, and then you're feeling happy and then miserable and angry and all of those things. But it's, as you say, it's all of those things. It's not just this kind of positive, happy state. There's nothing wrong with us. Do you know what I mean? It's just about feeling our feelings, as you said. Sophie, can I ask you, how are you right now? How on your health journey, where are you at?
Well, I've been doing really well the last year, let's say instead of but, I've just found out I have new brain tumor. Like Friday, I found that out. So this is round 5 of brain tumors for me. And I am at the thin end of my options, but I have cancer, and as I always say, I have cancer, it doesn't have me. That's my mantra. And I did get hit by a freight train for a day, but I feel quite calm. I'm back in my investigative mode. I've learned that one of the things I'm best at, which I guess part of this audio book is an expression of, is I'm very creative in a crisis. And I'm going to bring my creativity to the next crisis, and we'll see. We'll see. It's a don't know. I'm under no illusions about my condition. And it's interesting what you were just saying, because I told my 10-year-old daughter about it on the day, and she was crying a lot and asking me really amazing questions. And she said, Mummy, I feel really fragile. And I said, darling, that is so the right word for you to use, age 10. And she kept trying, she said, shall I read to you, Mummy? And she kept trying to cheer me up. And I just sat with her and said, no, let's cry together, darling. I need to cry, you need to cry. And we just sat and sobbed in each other's arms, because I want her to feel her grief and her fear and I want her to feel it, and not to try and make me happy or cheer us all up. And we sat together, crying together and answering her questions. And I promised her, when I know I'm going to die, I'll tell you. And that's how I want to teach my daughter to live her life.
Yeah, and the sense of you giving it permission for her, the permission for her to, I mean, that's the ultimate permission, I think, that any mother could ever give her child, is what you just said. Yeah.
So I trust, more than anything in my life, I trust the life shocks I'm given. I just have deep, deep faith that whenever something like this happens, my question is, what's in it for me? I don't know the answer to that yet. I'm only getting headaches, but I'm looking at everything in my life that's giving me a headache. And I'm looking at treatment plans, and that's the best I've got right now.
Okay. Well, I think your work is extraordinary. For me, the authenticity that you show by walking the talk, basically, writing books and going, despite, all the difficulties and the challenges that you're facing as a human being, but as a mother to a 10-year-old child, and that you're still writing, you're still broadcasting, you're still showing this amazing work, I think is just inspiration in itself. So thank you so much for joining me today, Sophie. And let's talk about that project, about doing some live sessions with that. I'll do one. Ooh. If you could be that.
Susie, thank you for seeing that I walk my talk. That's probably the most important feedback anyone can give me. So I appreciate you knowing that about me. Yeah, and thank you for having me as a guest today.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. Lots of love.
My pleasure. Lots of love to you.